Fallingwater, which was a house designed by the architect Frank Lloyd Wright in 1935.
Kaufman family of Pittsburgh. This is a family of three: Edgar, Lily, and their son Edgar Jr. This is the family that owned Kaufman's department stores, if you're familiar with Kaufman's. Got its start in Pittsburgh in around 1870. Lily.
It's located in the Laurel Highlands of southwest Pennsylvania, about 70 miles southeast of Pittsburgh in the United States. It's built partially over a waterfall on Bear Run, which is in the Mill Run section of Stewart Township, Fayette County, Pennsylvania. The house was designed to serve as a weekend retreat. I'm reading directly from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, but I wanted to give them credit. After its completion, Time magazine called Fallingwater Wright's most beautiful job, and it's listed among Smithsonian's life list of 28 places to see before you die. I was glad that I visited, but to tell you the truth, I was somewhat disappointed. I expected to see a fairly expansive mansion for this rather wealthy family, but the house was tiny and the rooms were tiny. Even though Frank Lloyd Wright brought in elements of nature and the outside into the indoors, he also restricted the spaces, the ceilings, the doorways. The room sizes were absolutely tiny compared to today's standard, and I wasn't particularly impressed. In addition, the house, unfortunately, is not very well maintained. I think the foundation that owns the home and manages the home does not have the sufficient funds to maintain the property, unfortunately. Also, I learned things about Frank Lloyd Wright that were quite disappointing. I think that the Kaufmans had followed up with him about some problems that they experienced in the home, several years after the home was built. And it appears that Frank Lloyd Wright just kind of brushed them off. So he didn't appear to be a very kind person. So the house was designated a National Historic Landmark on May 11, 1976, and the members of the American Institute of Architects named Fallingwater the best all-time work of American architecture in 1991. In 2007, it was ranked 29th on the list of America's favorite architecture.
So one of the things Wright liked to do with his houses was blur those lines between inside and outside.
Wright built the house to reflect the Kaufman's interest in nature, and the architecture conformed to nature.
The terrace on the far side of the room is open and it's a beautiful place to explore, but enjoy looking around.
Frank Lloyd Wright was 67 when he was given the opportunity to design and construct 3 different establishments, Fallingwater being one of them, in the late 1930s. So we're talking about during the time of the Depression. So he designed Fallingwater, the Johnson Wax Building in Racine, Wisconsin, and the Herbert Jacobs House in Madison, Wisconsin. I guess at this time, Wright was well known for his architecture, but with these 3 projects, he regained somewhat of his prominence. And Lillian Kaufman was a keen outdoors person. She liked hiking and horseback riding. They had one child, Edgar Kaufman Jr., who actually introduced Frank Lloyd Wright to his father. In 1934, this is the younger Kaufman, read Frank Lloyd Wright's autobiography and traveled to meet him in Wisconsin. Within 3 weeks, he began an apprenticeship at the Taliesin Fellowship, which was a communal architecture program established in 1932 by Wright and his wife, Olga Vanna. It was during a visit to their son at the Taliesin in November of 1934 that Edgar and Lillian Kaufman met Wright. The Kaufmans lived in a French Norman estate in Fox Chapel. However, the family also owned this remote property outside of Pittsburgh, which had a small cabin near a waterfall, which was used as a summer retreat. When the cabin deteriorated, Kaufman contacted Wright, and in December 1934, Wright visited Bear Run and got a survey of the area around the waterfall, including boulders, trees, the topography, and they forwarded this to Wright in March of 1935. Kaufman contacted Wright and said he'd be visiting him on September 22nd, 9 months after their initial meeting. And Wright had told Kaufman all along that he was making progress on his plans for a home, but in actuality, he hadn't prepared anything. So Wright drew the plans for the house within 2 hours. The 2 hours that it took Kaufman to drive to his place. Wright designed the home above the waterfall. Kaufman expected it to be below the falls to afford them a view of the falls, and he was apparently very upset initially with that change. I agree with that. When I visited, I thought it was such a shame that the Kaufmans couldn't view the waterfall from their home, which is what I would have liked. And there is a site when you walk through the paths in the gardens. There's an absolutely gorgeous spot where you can view the waterfall, where I would have thought they could have established the home. There appears to have been enough room for it since it's such a small house. So the Kaufmans planned to entertain large groups, and they requested separate bedrooms and a bedroom for their adult son in addition to a guest room. Wright made an additional visit to the site and generated a cost estimate for the job in October of 1935. In December, they opened a rock quarry to the west of the site and provided the stones needed for the house's walls. Wright visited only periodically during construction, assigning his apprentice, Robert Mosher, as his permanent on-site representative. The main house was completed in 1938, and the guest house, which is up a slight, well, not slight, it's a stairwell, an external stairwell. The guest house was completed the following year. The final drawings were issued by Wright in March of 1936, and work began on the bridge and the main house in April. The construction was plagued by conflicts between Wright, Kaufman, and the contractor. So Kaufman did not agree with Wright in how he determined to reinforce the concrete. Wright took offense by the report of a firm of consulting engineers that Kaufman hired, stating that the concrete was insufficiently reinforced. And he petulantly demanded that Kaufman return his drawings and said he was withdrawing from the project. So Kaufman relented, and the engineer's report was buried within a stone wall of the house. The contractor also did some independent computations and argued for increasing the reinforced steel in the first floor slab, which Wright refused to do. So it appears that perhaps the contractor quietly doubled the amount of reinforcement. There was a pool there, and Lillian apparently enjoyed swimming nude, and she also collected modern art, especially the works of Diego Rivera, who you can see in multiple different paintings collected in the guest house. And during a process of restoration in 1995, it was confirmed that additional concrete reinforcement had been added. So the original estimate for building Fallingwater was $35,000, but the final cost for the home and guest house was actually $155,000, which included a garage and servants' quarters, and $8,000 for the architect's fee. So adjusted for inflation, the cost of the home would have been about $3.3 million in 2022 costs. In 2001, the restoration of the house was estimated to be approximately $11.5 million. So the Kaufmans used the home from 1937 till 1963, when Edgar Kaufman Jr. donated the property to the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, which manages it today, I believe. The family had a life estate, I guess it's called, and they are able to use Fallingwater on weekends. The house and 7 other Frank Lloyd Wright constructions are now World Heritage Sites. While I'm glad I went, I probably won't be visiting any other Frank Lloyd Wright sites. Thanks for watching.